Sir, tell me about law and caste in judiciary.
Law and caste in judiciary, particularly in Indian judiciary, the judiciary is totally dominated by upper caste. Originally, the higher judiciary is totally dominated by Brahmins. It's an exclusive monopoly of Brahmins. Later on, the so-called upper caste people had to fight against the Brahmin domination. Forget about the lower caste, backward classes and Dalits. There is a huge fight, a constant fight against the domination of Brahmins in the higher judiciary.
In Supreme Court, okay.
In the higher judiciary, high courts and Supreme Court.
Okay.
So slowly these people could enter the upper caste. When once after the independence, when the political power is slowly snatched away by these upper caste people, particularly this in Andhra Pradesh, Reddys and come up, and in other high courts and Supreme Courts, non-Brahmin community, when once the political power is concentrated in this higher caste people, slowly the Brahmin domination in the higher judiciary also came to the little lesser extent, and these people were slowly occupying the place of Brahmins,
Upper caste people.
upper caste people. The stage at the time of the backward classes and the Dalits has not yet come.
Okay.
Still, they are on the fringes of this judiciary, particularly the higher judiciary. Originally, at the time of independence, just I will give you the brief history of this judiciary. When the Britishers ruled in this country, even the lowest position of a magistrate, the junior judge, magistrate was also manned by Britishers. The Britishers were under the impression that the Indians, including the Brahmins, were not fit to become judges. They had no capacity to judge, even the Brahmins.
Okay.
So that's why they had to import people from London,
Okay.
from England, to be posted as magistrates.
Okay.
Forget about the High Court judges and the other judges.
Okay.
So that was the attitude of Britishers at that time. So the Brahmins, in initial stage, they had to fight for an opportunity to be appointed as judges,
Okay.
which was denied to them.
Okay.
You think of a stage where Brahmins were also denied to be appointed as judges.
Okay.
Imagine what would be the state of non-Brahmins, backward classes and the Dalits. So
Okay.
that was the stage. Even Gopala Krishna Gokhale,
Okay.
he was on record to show that by this practice of denying the opportunity of Brahmins to become as judges, you are dwarfing Indians.
Okay.
They are stunting the growth of Indians.
Okay.
So please give us a chance of appointment to become judges. So slowly they had to fight.
Okay.
Brahmins were fighting. Brahmins had fought. They got some opportunity. They got some share. So thereby, at the time of independence and even after independence, majority of the judges were Brahmins. Majority of the judges of the Supreme Court were Brahmins. Majority of the judges of different high courts were Brahmins.
Okay.
So from the domination of Brahmins,
Okay.
then again the fight started by the non-Brahmins.
Okay.
Non-Brahmins, particularly the dominating community of the non-Brahmins.
Okay.
For example, in Andhra Pradesh, Reddys and Kama.
Okay.
Other similar communities, Jats, other Kshatriyas, other people, other castes. So the fight went on for some time. So slowly they could enter into the higher judiciary, this so-called non-Brahmins. When the non-Brahmins started fighting for the post of judges, the Brahmins were openly telling that you non-Brahmins are not fit to become judges. What the British were telling against the Brahmins, the Brahmins repeated the same against non-Brahmins. So the fight of the non-Brahmins went on. Now there is a stage, because they say, they were telling that you people have no merit. You people have no capacity to judge things. You people have no concept of law. You non-Brahmins are not fit to become judges, since you have no merit. So the merit at this stage started with Brahmins at the time of independence, came down to non-Brahmins, and the so-called merit stopped in Andhra Pradesh, at least with Reddys and Kamas. Even the merit has not reached the Kapus, the other dominating community in Andhra Pradesh. So forget about this BCs and SCs. Right from the beginning, there is no reservation in the appointment of judges in the High Courts and Supreme Courts. They were refusing. Though there was a strong demand for it, the Constitution, there is no provision for it. In spite of having this provision in the Supreme Court, but even for norm's sake also, there is no norms of taking non-Brahmin, backward classes and scheduled castes, scheduled tribes as judges. So now, since there is no reservations in the higher judiciary, you don't find sufficient number of backward classes, scheduled castes and scheduled tribes in the higher judiciary, that is in the High Court and Supreme Court. So this is the role played by the caste in the appointment of judges in the higher judiciary. So now, let me take the example of Andhra Pradesh. Andhra Pradesh, now the present strength is at about 43 or 49. So 50% should go to backward classes, scheduled castes and scheduled tribes.
That's a law.
No. General principles of reservation. There is no law higher judiciary.
Yeah, on reservation,
On reservation.
Yeah.
So there is no question of reservation. But if you take the reservations in the other fields, 50%, that's the maximum limit. So 50% comes to 49, so it's almost 25. 24.
Yeah.
SCs and BCs, STs put together, there should be 24 at least minimum in the High Court of Andhra Pradesh. But hardly there we are having 2 backward class judges, 2 SC judges, no representation from ST. Practically there is no representation from ST in Andhra Pradesh High Court. Minorities there are. There are 2 Muslims. Yes. But unfortunately, the establishment or the administrators think that minorities means Muslims only. But there are Christians, particularly in Andhra Pradesh, there are Sikhs and Buddhists elsewhere. But in Andhra Pradesh, there are Christians, sufficient number of Christians. But minorities, they only consider Muslims. So now presently there are 2 Muslim judges in the Andhra Pradesh. From the history of the establishment of Andhra Pradesh High Court, only 1 advocate belonging to scheduled tribes was appointed. He retired, and thereafter there is no appointment of a at all. So almost 50 means the SCs should be represented by 8. We are only having 2. 4 should be given to STs. There is none. So this is the composition of Andhra Pradesh High Court, and this is the role of or the power of the caste in the higher judiciary. Women also, there is no proper representation in Andhra Pradesh High Court. At least the judiciary or the appointing authorities are not conceding the due share to the women. They are all women. They can get Brahmin women if they want. Brahmin women are there. Reddy women are there. Kamma women are there. They can give to the women. But this male chauvinism in the higher judiciary is also so powerful that very reluctantly they have appointed 2 women judges in Andhra Pradesh. Now we are having 2. At least they should do half, at least 1/3, but no. So this judiciary is not prepared to share the judicial power, administration of justice with backward class, scheduled caste and scheduled tribes, minorities and women. So these people have to fight for it. Constitution says equality. The soul of the Constitution is equality and equal opportunity. Unless opportunities are given, no one will be in a position to prove his merit. So you give proper opportunity and they will prove their merit. They will excel in the field. So therefore Constitution says equal opportunity and equality. So that is totally denied in the appointments of higher judiciary now.
So one question is about this merit. There is a different discussion about merit, that certain fields of Indian Constitution also, they say certain fields are exempted from reservation policy because they say it spoils the reservation. Even now they talk about the medical and reservation. So that what is your point of under the Constitution and your law experience? How do you explain this merit with what the argument the anti-reservation people talk about?
Particularly as far as merit is concerned, merit is nowhere defined. No meaning to merit is given so far by the High Court or the Supreme Court. Just they say merit means merit, that's all. What is the merit? What do you mean by merit? No one is in a position to define merit. Scientifically established merit. 2 + 2 is equal to 4. That's a mathematical formula. There is no such formula to explain what is merit. Constitution does not speak about merit. That is the invention of the Supreme Court judges.
Which one is invention?
Merit.
Oh, that is invention of Supreme Court.
Invention of Supreme Court judgment. Constitution never speaks about merit. Constitution speaks about, particularly in certain appointments, they only say suitability.
Okay.
Suitability is different from merit.
Okay.
So merit is invention of the Supreme Court judges in order to deny the opportunities to SCs, STs and BCs.
Okay.
Since fundamentally it is decided by them or established by them that the backward class people, scheduled caste and scheduled tribes have no merit, so they are not fit to become High Court judges and Supreme Court judges. That's all. So you cannot, even one judgment, Supreme Court judges, in one case, they said that there is nothing like merit. You cannot establish that there is no yardstick for merit. You cannot measure the merit. Merit is not the marks scored in your examination. Totally merit is a different aspect. So you cannot deny the chances or the opportunities of any class by branding them as non-meritorious or lack of merit. So this theory of merit, this anti-meritorian or the anti-mandal agitation is only, it's a clock to deny the opportunities of SCs, STs and BCs to get there, in order to get their due share in the administration of justice or in the other administration.
So many people say, for example, in lower judiciary there is reservation, if I am not wrong. Then since the lower judiciary there is a reservation, and the process of selection of judges is a very transparent or something, and they can compete with the other people and they can apply and they can get a job. People say that you come with a qualification, 100 people come, Chief Justice or 1 or 2, we choose. How does this, why it's they are not capable, people say. How do you define this?
Lower judiciary there is a reservation. Of course with great difficulty we got it. Even in the beginning of lower judiciary, that is district level, district and taluk level, there was no reservation earlier. With great difficulty we fought for it and got it.
Which year it was?
Somewhere about 70s. So there is no reservation for High Court and Supreme Court. I will tell you one example. Let's say because of there is reservations in the lower judiciary, there is a written test and an interview, oral interview. Written test nobody can stop them, but in the oral interview they got their own mechanism to deny the opportunities of this class, and they are denying it. I will give you the latest example. In the latest recruitment of junior civil judge, junior civil judge, in the written test, the scheduled caste particularly excelled. They come more in number than required. In the interview, they scored higher marks. In the district judge and selection to district judge I am speaking. In the selection to district judges, let us say there are 6 posts. 2 posts or 1 post reserved for scheduled caste. Backward class and scheduled caste outnumbered the caste Hindus. In the selection, even the interview also, they scored higher marks than the caste Hindus, the scheduled caste and backward class put together.
Okay.
I think there are 6 vacancies. I am not sure of the vacancies, but in the entire 6 vacancies, they could not find one Brahmin candidate who came with the merit, the so-called merit. So these people, they are all proved to be more meritorious than the upper caste, including Brahmins.
Okay.
So in the selection committee, a Brahmin High Court judge who is having a power to maneuver the things got to it to scrap the entire selection list
Of districts.
of the district judges because he could not find one Brahmin who come up in the merit. In the merit, forget about reserved seats. In the open merit, backward class and scheduled caste scored higher marks. Since he could not get one Brahmin candidate, at least one, so he saw to it on some technical pretext. They got the entire selection list cancelled, and they got again for fresh selection. So this is how they outdo the things. This is how they say that we want merit. These people proved merit. Yes, we are more meritorious than these. They cannot show that these people are not having merit. So the only other way is this, by some proof method. You cancel it and get other. Now, even the next election also, probably they invent a method to see that these people could not come in the open category list. I don't know what mechanism they developed. So this is how this caste operates right from the beginning, in the inception of the appointments of judges in the lower category as well as the High Court. And entire profession, legal profession is dominated by upper caste. Once it was the total 10% domination of Brahmins, you don't find any non-Brahmin advocate. All Brahmins dominating the entire legal profession. Slowly, as I was telling, in the appointment of judges, slowly these upper caste Hindus, non-Brahmins, slowly they could enter into this legal profession. Ultimately, the legal profession depends upon the social background, political background. So once the political power is snatched away from Brahmins by the non-Brahmin upper caste Hindus, so they could get the domination of the profession. So so they could enter into the profession. Slowly the dominance of the Brahmins was lessened, reduced. Now the entire legal profession is dominated by upper caste Hindus and Brahmins. These people are struggling to enter into the profession, to sustain them. Having entered, it's difficult to sustain. It is very difficult to sustain for backward classes. We imagine the state of affairs of scheduled castes and scheduled tribes. There is no social backing for them, no economic backing, no political backing. Unless you have a social backing, economic backing and a political backing, you cannot establish or shine or prove your merit, so-called, in the profession. This legal profession is totally different on the backing given by your society, the community and the political. So this is the situation. And when once any person who could stand and prove his mettle in the profession, legal profession, is one exemplary instance. It's very difficult to get into and retain there. So my experience is totally different. I had to struggle from the very beginning. No doubt I have some political and social backing. My father was an MLA. Earlier my father was a teacher. So my father was an MLA. I had a political backing. I had a social backing. Since I was a student belonging to a particular social background, I could sustain there. But getting into it, the retaining my standard there is very difficult because there is a totally hostile atmosphere in the courts. Since all the judges are upper caste, since all the judges are mostly Brahmins and other upper caste people, the hostile situation I had to face. The psychological feeling, impression of the judges sitting there is that, oh, this man belongs to scheduled caste. Oh, this man belongs to backward class. Once this profession should be, only it should belong to us, belong to upper caste Hindus. This profession should belong to Brahmins only. How these people are entering into this profession? How these backward classes, scheduled castes and scheduled tribes are entering this profession? We should put an end to this. They are competing with us. They are sharing the power with us. They are sharing the legal power with us. So we should not allow them. We should not encourage them. So normally no judges, maybe there is a rare exception, they are prepared mentally to encourage an advocate belonging to backward classes, scheduled castes and scheduled tribes. So we have to fight for the initial backing, and we have to fight for our place in the courts against the judges. So against this background,
Okay.
we have to fight.
So, but recently we had KG Balakrishnan as AC judge, so that he also came under that whatever. If you say that there is a caste system suppressing, but how can KG Balakrishnan come, and what do you think about that actually?
The appointment of KG Balakrishnan is a very interesting appointment. He was particularly chosen to be appointed as High Court judge. There was an attempt to get him into the post of High Court judge. I don't want to give the names and all of this, but there was a scheme, because Kerala High Court, there is no person representing the scheduled caste right from the beginning. So they wanted to get one person belonging to scheduled caste to be appointed as High Court judge, and he was made. So once he was made as High Court judge, out of his seniority and experience. At a very early age he was made as High Court judge. So he has become Chief Justice of the High Court. When once he was appointed as Chief Justice of High Court, he has to necessarily be elevated to Supreme Court by his senior. So there was an attempt to see that he is not elevated to Supreme Court for a couple of years. He was to be made as Supreme Court judges 3 years earlier to the year which was made, in order to deny him the opportunity of a long stint as the Chief Justice of India. He was not taken to Supreme Court judges. His efforts, his chances were stopped. He was continued to be a Chief Justice. Some of his juniors were elevated to Supreme Court because they could not stop him becoming Supreme Court judges. They could stop him only to become a Supreme Court judge earlier. When K.R. Narayan was President of India, he wrote a letter to the Chief Justice of India. When once an attempt is made to appoint some judges of the Supreme Court, and Balakrishnan's opportunities were denied, purposefully they are not making Balakrishnan as judge of the Supreme Court. Without naming Balakrishnan, K.R. Narayan, in the capacity of President of India, addressed a letter to the Chief Justice of India, the then Chief Justice of India. There are suitable candidates belonging to scheduled caste, scheduled tribes and the women category. Please consider the chances of those people to be elevated as Supreme Court judge. The then Chief Justice replied to that letter, it is better to keep the place vacant than to be filled with an incompetent person. So, but finally, Balakrishnan was made as Supreme Court judge, and he was there as the Chief Justice of India for 3 to 4 years. But when his real chance, he could have been there for 7 long years. Perhaps the second longest Chief Justice would have become. This is opportunity for the rest. Chief Justice of India will be appointed after his retirement as the chairperson of the National Human Rights Commission. And he was made in order to deny his chances of becoming the chairperson of the National Human Rights Commission. The complaint of that he is corrupt and his family persons were corrupt. So this bogey of corruption at that time was brought in. So yes, no doubt they could not do anything, but his chances were, his image was blurred, his image was blackened. Though he is not corrupt, but his family members were corrupt, he allowed them to become rich this time. So there were several allegations against several Chief Justices of India. Nothing came out.
Like?
I can't name them.
Okay. Watch it.
But there is even the 3 or 4 retired Chief Justices of the Supreme Court were on record that at least there is 40% corruption in the higher judiciary. There are allegations on Chief Justices, but nothing came out. But only everything came out when Balakrishnan was the Chief Justice and when he was going to be appointed as Human Rights Commission. Okay. So that is also the influence of this caste, how caste works still.
You told 2-3 points in very interesting. K.G. Balakrishnan, after he became Chief Justice, was there any change? How was the Chief Justice earlier in his period? How was it?
Balakrishnan, he could not make.
Okay.
See, as a Chief Justice of India, he had the chance and opportunity of picking up some competent persons from scheduled caste to be appointed as High Court judges. But Constitution does not give him the sole power. He, along with 3 senior colleagues, there is a collegium, that is called collegium. Only collegium selects the candidates to be appointed as High Court judges. Balakrishnan was never allowed to have his say. These 3 people were never, 3 people alone did not allow him to pick and choose the candidates of his choice. Though they were capable, the number of competent persons available from scheduled caste community to be appointed as judges of the High Court throughout India. The days that these people are not competent are gone. These people are proving their merit, so-called merit. They are accomplishing in every aspect of the law. They are proving their mettle. They are excelling in every field. They can be appointed as High Court judges. But question is, these 4 judges sitting together must select these people. Chief Justice alone cannot do that. So he is not able to bargain with them. So that's why he could not make any appointment. I say that it's a failure. What was expected of him? After all, when he is representing a particular caste, he should also represent the interests of it. He should safeguard the interests of that community. Otherwise, what is the use of making him as judge? So therefore, that aspect he could not do anything.
So any interesting judgment he gave?
Not that great judgment. 2 or 3 judgments.
How about K.R. Narayanan? Because I remember BJP government wanted to revive the constitution. So could you tell me the importance of K.R. Narayanan with this judiciary at least?
K.R. Narayanan is one of the most probable, I think, one of the greatest presidents we have ever had. An excellent president. He proved to be an excellent president. When the attempt to do constitution was in the offing during BJP regime, he posed a question to the nation. Why you want to change this constitution? Why you want to replace the constitution? Whether the constitution failed or we failed the constitution? That's the question posed by K.R. Narayanan. You answer this. You want to change this constitution because the constitution according to you failed us. Answer this question, whether the constitution really failed or we failed the constitution. That's why the attempt was nullified. I wrote a book, The Constitution and the Coup d'etat.
In Telugu or?
In English. The Constitution and the Coup d'etat. What is the conspiracy behind this? Why the people wanted to change this constitution, replace the constitution with other constitution? Right from the beginning, from the day when I entered the legal profession, when I entered arguing the High Court and Supreme Court, my view is that we are having 2 parallel constitutions in this country. One is the Constitution of India, the other is Manodharma Shastra. But though the Constitution of India, all these institutions are supposed to be in accordance with the Constitution of India, right from the President of India, the Prime Minister, the Cabinet, High Court judges, Supreme Court judges, all the statutes, all the authorities, entire machinery, both legal, executive, judiciary, should be run in accordance with the Constitution of India. But my firm view is that most of the administration, including the judiciary, is run in accordance with the Manodharma Shastra, not in accordance with the Constitution. The soul of Constitution of India is equality and equal opportunity. The soul of Manodharma Shastra is inequality and no opportunity. The very aspect that the Supreme Court judges, there is no constitutional prohibition that there shall be no reservations in higher judiciary or this scientific institution defense, etc., or higher learning. But the Supreme Court in their judgment said, no, reservation, you shall not have reservations in this. That is still the mentality adopted by Manu, that only these upper castes are having merit. Therefore, only they can be appointed in certain places, and these people are not fit to become or to man those posts. Therefore, the Constitution of India is not being implemented in its full vigor and force and spirit. So, because of these efforts of K.R. Narayan, I think that the attempt of the BJP was failed, and they could not, because there was a great agitation against their attempt, and that was they withdrew it.
So many people talk about this Republic Day we celebrate. India celebrates Republic Day, and I do not see Ambedkar as a national icon considered, and I don't think he's a father of Indian Republic, and he is the father of Indian Constitution also. So that, how do you see his role in Constitution, and how is it Manu Dharma Shastra has followed and BJP wanted to revive this Constitution because Dalit wrote it, Untouchable wrote it, and how the judiciary sees Ambedkar?
As far as the Constitution of India is concerned, the chief architect of the Constitution of India is Dr. Ambedkar. Even Supreme Court also recognized that. Constitution, no doubt, it is the combined effort of the Constituent Assembly, but the entire discussion, the entire draft, the entire scheme of the Constitution is prepared by the drafting committee. That drafting committee is headed by Dr. Ambedkar. There are 7 members of the drafting committee, but no one assisted in the final draft of the Constitution of India. It is the sole single handiwork of Dr. Ambedkar.
How can you explain this?
That's available in the Constitution itself. Even at the time of adoption of the Constitution on 26th November 1949, the constituent members, particularly T.T. Krishnamacharya and Sir Alladi, they openly admitted and acknowledged that it is, though no doubt we are all members of the drafting committee, we could not assist him. Some are engaged in their business, some are in abroad, some are sick, but it is only Dr. Ambedkar alone who drafted the Constitution of India in its present form. So all credit went to Dr. Ambedkar. It was acknowledged on 29th November 1949 in the Parliament itself. So it is on record. It's only Dr. Ambedkar who totally, completely drafted the Constitution of India. Of course, culminating all the discussions, all the suggestions. If you go through the Constitution debates, Constituent Assembly debates, the work of Dr. Ambedkar will be revealed. Not only the work, the genius of Ambedkar will be revealed in the Constitutional debates of the Constituent Assembly. So, the Constitution of India, as drafted by Dr. Ambedkar, is now being referred and followed in India. Supreme Court, which is the interpreter of the Constitution, arbiter of the Constitution, whenever a doubt comes, whenever a question comes, what is the intention of the constitutional maker? What is the meaning of this particular word in the Constitution? What is the meaning expected by them? Why this particular word is used by Dr. Ambedkar? Why comma has put in? Why full stop? Why this adjective? Why this noun? They refer to the Constituent Assembly debates. Whenever a particular aspect of the constitutional provision is interpreted by the Supreme Court of India, they have to necessarily refer to Dr. Ambedkar's explanation. They have to necessarily refer to the Dr. Ambedkar debates. What is the meaning given by Dr. Ambedkar? So day in and day out, as and when the provisions of the Constitution of India are explained or interpreted by the Constitution of India, they have to necessarily refer to Dr. Ambedkar. Without referring to Dr. Ambedkar, without taking the name of Dr. Ambedkar, they cannot interpret the Constitution of India. No Supreme Court judge is in a position now to interpret the Constitution without taking the help of Dr. Ambedkar. So that is the state. So he is the total architect of the Constitution. He is the maker of the Constitution. Unfortunately, since he belongs to scheduled caste community, the upper caste Hindus are not prepared to accept him as the national icon, as the chief architect of the Constitution of India. Constitution of India means Dr. Ambedkar. Dr. Ambedkar means the Constitution of India. You cannot separate the two. But unfortunately, these people are not prepared to accept it. Without Dr. Ambedkar, there is no Constitution of India. Without the Constitution of India, you cannot achieve the real democracy, the real equality. Why the BJP people wanted to replace the Constitution of India? Not because it's written by or it's adapted by a Dalit. No. Constitution of India has a scheme, has a vision, has a plan, has a draft to bring social, economic, political equality. That they do not want. The Constitution, the scheme of the Constitution of India is a social revolution. The scheme of Constitution of India as a democratic economic revolution. So the Constitution contemplates of bringing social, economic and political equality. That these people do not want. The Hindu chauvinists, the upper caste people, those who do not want an equality and those who are not prepared to share the political power equally with scheduled castes and scheduled tribes. So they do not want this equality to be established. So that's why they want to share this totally abolish this Constitution of India. If they do not want equality, if they do not want to establish economic equality, social equality, political equality, Constitution comes in their way. Constitution speaks of equality. It wants equality, but they do not want equality. So the Constitution of India has a stumbling block in the path of these caste Hindus to continue their social economic domination over the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes and other weaker sections of the society. So therefore they wanted to change it.
I remember one of the faculty, my friend was saying, in a law class, they said don't speak Ambedkar word architect. There were various which you said the opposite. So I want to know how these law colleges, because I remember even the Chennai Law College, there was Ambedkar Law College, and the advocates who are reading the Constitution are not ready to accept the Ambedkar Law College. Rather they said Chennai Law College, and there was a big. So how do you see these institutions, functions, education?
As I said earlier, you cannot separate Dr. Ambedkar from the Constitution of India, and you cannot separate the Constitution of India from Dr. Ambedkar. Both are synonymous. When the people are not prepared to accept him as such in that capacity, it reflects their upper caste mentality. It reflects. The Constitution, Dr. Ambedkar is the chief architect of the Constitution of India. Every court, including the Supreme Court of India, should have the photograph of Dr. Ambedkar, not Mahatma Gandhi. Mahatma Gandhi has nothing to do with justice. Mahatma Gandhi has nothing to do with the administration of justice. Mahatma Gandhi has nothing to do with courts. Mahatma Gandhi has nothing to do with the appointment of judges. But his photograph is there. But the person who is responsible for the Constitution of India, preparing the constitution scheme, its philosophy, his photograph is not there because he belongs to a particular community. That's only. It reflects the upper caste mentality of the school.
So that even the lawyers in the colleges are taught, the upcoming lawyers in the colleges, majority of the colleges teaches that Ambedkar, they don't teach Ambedkar's importance.
They have to teach.
No, do they in the...
Yes, they will teach. They have to teach.
Okay, they cannot escape.
Because they cannot escape.
But how do they limit the teaching?
They cannot. If you want to teach Constitution of India, you have to teach Dr. Ambedkar. You have to take the name of Dr. Ambedkar. What is the meaning given by equality?
Okay.
What is the meaning given to equal opportunity? See, at each and every step, in the separation of powers of the state, powers of the center, everywhere, what is the intention? What is this intention? A particular provision, if they want to interpret. What is the meaning given by Dr. Ambedkar? Such in the Constitutional Assembly debate. So they have day in and day out, they have to take the name of Dr. Ambedkar. They will take, but they are not prepared to reflect the same.
Okay.
When they take up the profession, when they become judges, they don't take the Ambedkar. But when they want to interpret the Constitution, they have to necessarily take the name of Dr. Ambedkar. That's whereby in all the judgments where the constitutional provisions are interpreted for the first time, Dr. Ambedkar's name will be there. Even the first amendment to the Constitution, Dr. Ambedkar's name they have taken. Even in the first case of reservation, the famous case of Balaji versus State of Mysore, the name of Dr. Ambedkar is taken. Declaration of emergency, name of Dr. Ambedkar is taken. Eliciting the powers of the President, name of Dr. Ambedkar will be taken. So everywhere.
So the other thing is, yes, we, in your point of view, we understand there is a caste rigid system in the judiciary, but our law also says there is advocates. You can argue the court case and you can win. But why there are no Supreme Court? You can find various advocates like Ram Jethmalani, Abhishek Singhvi, all a political background, but they are becoming very famous. Why aren't there Dalit advocates becoming famous? Because advocates, anybody can go and argue a case. How is that functions then?
See, an advocate becoming a top player, it highly depends upon patronage of the judges. If the judges give you lift, you will become the very next morning a celebrated lawyer. So these judges will encourage their own castemen. These judges will encourage those persons who are having similar social background. That's why they are becoming. See, Nani Palkiwala was considered to be the topmost lawyer in India at the time of the Constitution of India. Still, this Nariman is considered to be, Ram Jethmalani considered to be, and there are another few lawyers belong to Parsi community. In the beginning, this Parsi community was patronaged by the judges. So whichever community is patronaged by the judges, they will come out. So all these people who are now on the top are only encouraged by the judges. Without the encouragement of, suppose I argue very vehemently, very lucidly, very powerfully, competently, but the judge dismisses my case, what would be my fate? What the client thinks? Oh, if I entrust this case to Mr. Tarakam, the judges won't allow him.
Okay.
So why should I lose my case? Tarakam may be a competent person, but I want result. If the judges are not in a position to give a positive result for these communities, they don't encourage. So therefore, you don't find any brilliant lawyer in the High Court or Supreme Court.
The so-called brilliant lawyer.
Yes. Because there is no patronage. There is an encouragement.
Okay. In the sense encouragement, you mean there will be in favor of, so that you mean the judiciary also does not look in the say of neutral. It takes a stand, and it is always depending upon the caste like that. Okay, is that the reason, for example, K.G. Balakrishnan, A. Raja, let me also want to comment your comment. A. Raja has been on the scam of 2G, but in the beginning there were big Tata, Ambani, Neera Radiate, Barka Dutt and Headlines Today. Many people were there part of it, but now only Raja is there. How do you see this issue? Because is there something, or Raja deserves it, that we are following?
I don't think that Raja alone deserves it. Raja may be responsible for this policy of allowing this license in the 2G spectrum. But every decision, particularly policy decision, not executive decision, every policy decision is the decision of the cabinet, not a single minister. That is the constitutional scheme. Ours is a parliamentary democracy run by an executive. Executive is in the shape of a cabinet headed by a prime minister. This is the constitutional scheme. So according to constitutional scheme, every decision will be taken by the cabinet. Prime minister is first among equals, not above. So every decision will be taken by the cabinet, executed by the individual minister related to this particular department. Suppose this decision related to economic policy, finance minister will be in charge of the execution. Suppose the policy relates to education, education minister will be in charge of the execution. Policy related to labor, labor minister. So likewise, this policy decision is taken by the union cabinet, given to execute to Raja, because he happened to be the minister of the commerce minister at the time. So if at all the minister is to be blamed, it's not the minister alone, the cabinet has to be blamed. Particularly this policy is not only related to commerce minister alone, finance minister is also involved, because commerce and other things come under the finance department. So the finance minister is also responsible for it. That's why now there is an attempt by Mr. Subramaniam to rope in Chidambaram also. So finance minister is responsible, prime minister also responsible. You must know, you must have heard in the press that in deciding this particularly, in finalizing this policy, Prime Minister of India is misled by his secretaries.
Yeah.
How could a Prime Minister be misled? Could you imagine? Is not a school boy to be misled? Prime Minister is misled by the secretaries. Own the responsibility. Responsibility is not yours, not your secretary. So own the responsibility, take the responsibility. That's why Prime Minister is responsible for the 2G scam, Finance Minister is responsible for the 2G scam, entire cabinet is responsible for the 2G scam. But this, again the question caste comes. The power of caste comes here. So they want to only pin down, they want to sacrifice, they want to hang only Raja, since he belongs to scheduled caste. If Raja belongs to a different caste, things would happen different. Probably we do not know where the 2G scam would be. They are trying, judicially now they are trying. Supreme Court, when it has decided the entire thing, why the Supreme Court left the decision whether to involve Chidambaram or not to the CBI court? Could he not decide? When the Supreme Court is taking the responsibility of daily investigation of this case, that is the duty of the investigating agency. Supreme Court is not the investigating agency. That is not his power, that's not the domain. It's not his duty. It is duty to judge the things at the final stage. Now the Supreme Court has taken the role of an investigator. When the investigation, it has taken this stage as investigator, it should investigate what is the role played by Chidambaram, why it left to the other courts. So the Supreme Court also wants to help Chidambaram. it wants to help the Prime Minister. They want to only call him Raja. So Raja is not alone the culprit. If at all there is a culpable role of a minister in the entire scheme, but these people also should be equated with Raja, but they are not doing it.
Our next question is about this SC/ST Atrocity Prevention of Atrocity Act. I find out across Tamil Nadu there is a opposition from even OBC communities that you should remove this SC/ST. That is one of the agendas they keep. How do you see this? And even many lawyers say that do not file the cases under SC/ST. You don't get justice. It is better you file without SC/ST for SC/ST people, they say. How do you see this?
But initially, these upper caste, the caste Hindus, or the non-scheduled caste, non-scheduled tribes, they do not want this act to become a law. They do not want this statute at all. It is a statute exclusively brought in to safeguard the interests of this community. Since they do not want it, so they are trying to rake up an issue to see that this act is abolished, this act is taken aback. So that's why there is an attempt to see that this act is being misused by scheduled caste and scheduled tribes. That is the propaganda they are making now. That is the bogey they are opening it. That this act is being misused. I say scheduled caste and scheduled tribes are not yet reached the stage of using any act. Forget about misuse. They do not know how to use a particular statute. They do not know about the statute itself. Even if they know about the statute, they do not know how to use it. Even they know how to use it, they don't have the wherewithal. They don't have the capacity. They don't have the economic standard to use a particular statute against their adversaries. So there is a question of misusing it. This provision, this act, is really a powerful act to protect the interests of the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes. It is an instrument to render some justice to the victims of atrocities by the hands of the scheduled caste. One important provision why these people do not want this statute to be implemented is there is a provision in this statute of denying anticipatory bail. Criminal Procedure Code gives an opportunity to obtain anticipatory bail when there is an allegation against a particular criminal. So that provision is taken away by the statute. If there is no such provision, immediately if a case is registered against a particular person under the statute, he has to be arrested, put in jail. It's a non-bailable offence, cognizable offence. Cognizable offence means without warrant he can be arrested. He is arrested, unless the court gives him bail, he cannot get bail. So there is no chance of anticipatory bail, and there is no chance of getting immediate bail. So that's why they do not want this act to be implemented at all.
How about the judges? Do they also support this act?
Judges support this
act?
Yes. I will give you one example of Andhra Pradesh. You know, I said that there is no anticipatory bail.
Yes, sir.
But for quite some time, the High Court of Andhra Pradesh was giving anticipatory bail to them. And one day, it's really happened. It's a strange experience. One day, I was sitting in the court, in the criminal court, waiting for my opportunity. But my turn. Earlier, some cases were being heard by the judge. One case suddenly, I could hear that the advocate is arguing about bail, anticipatory bail, in the SC/ST Prevention of Atrocities Act. I was really taken aback. How the advocate is arguing anticipatory bail when there is no such provision in the Act. Then just I was watching. And the judge has readily granted it. Then though it is not my duty, I could not contain it. So I stood up. I am sorry for the intervention. Of course I have no business to intervene. But when this court is granting anticipatory bail, when there is no such provision under the statute, I am sorry I have taken objection. The judge was stunned. He asked me, where do you get that? I said, look into the provision. Take the book. This is the referred. I quoted the section. You come to that particular section, the anticipatory bail provision is not there. Then the judge, because he could not see, vent his anger against me, he vent his anger against the public prosecutor. Why you did not bring this provision to my notice? So then, from that time onwards, there is no anticipatory bail in Kerala. But they invented another provision.
They amended.
No.
Okay,
they invented another device.
Okay.
Another method. There is one section in the Criminal Procedure Code that is giving inherent powers to the court. Inherent powers means any power. Powers are given in these different sections. But inherent power means beyond that also you can have power to do anything. So what these people are doing is filing applications under this inherent powers. You have got inherent powers. So trash this affair. This affair is wrong. This affair is false. But whether it is false or true, it is not the purview of the High Court judge at that time. So as soon as the crime is registered, these people are coming to the High Court, filing applications under section 482, asking for stay, release of the accused. So as soon as an application under this statute is filed, the judges, yes, admit and granted bail, including the all provisions. No, I'm sorry, I'm not able to get that word. Is stayed. All proceedings are stayed. All proceedings, further proceedings are stayed. Further proceedings are stayed, including the arrest of the accused. So what they could not get in this under this anticipatory bail provision, so now they are getting it through this inherent power. So the judges are also helping in diluting this.
So two questions. Maybe if you're tired, we can end. Two questions. One is about the atrocities committed, like Kailanji, Chundur, Karamchedu, and the Hyderabad Central University investigation, and those all things. The other thing is that this constitution, whenever the vindicative is like Satyam Babu, only Dalits are vindicated, Muslims and Dalits religious in this various issue. So this is the constitution law falls only on Dalits because the Kailanji issue judgment. How do you see these all things?
Every judgment reflects the social background of the judge. It depends upon the judge. So let us take the example of Kailanji. Kailanji is a very horrible, brutal massacre. 4 persons were butchered, 2 women were gang raped, brothers were forced to commit rape on their mother and sister. Such a heinous act was done. When they refused to do that, they were butchered, they were killed, and the dead bodies were thrown only on the ground that these people are scheduled castes, they have education and they have land. They do not want education and land to be owned and enjoyed by the scheduled caste. That is again the dictum of Manudharma Shastra. That's why I said 2 parallel constitutions are running this country, ruling this country. Manudharma Shastra says these Dalits, these untouchables shall have no education. They shall not own land. So these people in Kailanji, you leave this land to us. When they said no, this thing happened. The judge Fortunately, he has given life imprisonment, but he refused to give death penalty. Why? Criminal Procedure Code says, if you want to give death penalty, you must establish that it is one of the rarest of the rare cases. That is the formula evolved by the Supreme Court. But the judge who tried this case could not find that it is the rarest case. Could he find any other case worse than this, brutal than this? On the philosophy of the judge. Depends upon the social philosophy of the judge. One judge, I will give you an example. In one high court, a scheduled tribe woman was raped. The sessions court who tried the case convicted the person, believing the evidence given by the prosecution, believing the evidence given by the victim. The case came to High Court. The High Court judge, you cannot imagine this, High Court judge acquitted him, stating that it is highly impossible to rape, it is highly impossible for a single man to rape a woman. Therefore, I am not believing the version given by. Further he says, the judge, High Court judge says, according to the evidence, she is an able-bodied woman, well-built woman, because scheduled tribe women are well-built. So a well-built woman could resist the attempts of rape against her. She could not resist because she wanted it. That is the mental attitude of the. So that's why we could find judgments like Karamchodu, Chunguru, Khairlanji, Judges, Pipra, Narayanpur, Tivoli, Sadhupur, and Kilbenwani.
Melavalavu, Kilbenwani.
That's why it depends upon the social background and social philosophy. Okay. That's why we want a representation in the judiciary. If these people have a sufficient number of judges, the social philosophy of the court will be changed. The way in which the judgments will be rendered by these people, the way in which these provisions are interpreted, so the whole character of the court will be changed.
So, last one. Many people say, you can maybe comment the earlier one also. Many people say 50 years or some years of constitution, I mean, reservation is still continuing. And Ambedkar also said 10 years, 15 years is enough, we'll revamp. So that what is the message you will give them?
Constitution, Dr. Ambedkar did not say the reservations are only for 10 years or 15 years. Only, there are two types of reservations in the Constitution. One is political reservation. The other is the social and education and service reservation. That is reservations in education and employment. Reservations in the legislature. Dr. Ambedkar wanted the reservations in the legislature only for 10 years. He did not give any time limit for the reservations in education and employment. These people are misleading it. Dr. Ambedkar was, yes, we want reservations in the political field only for 10 years. If you give us reservations and if you give an opportunity to get ourselves elected, to have our own candidates elected, 10 years is sufficient for us. We can dominate the political scene. The very purpose of reservation in providing an opportunities in the education and employment, that purpose is not yet reached. Therefore, I say that the true spirit of the Constitution is not yet started. The Constitution in its true spirit is not being implemented. To implement the Constitution in its true spirit, resolve the Constitution, put the Constitution to practice, start implementing the policies envisaged in the Constitution. start making the constitution function, work, then I'm sure if the constitution is made to work in its true spirit, 50 is more than enough. But the constitution is not yet started functioning. These people are undoing the constitution. These people are dubbing this constitution. The constitution schemes are not being implemented. So therefore, the need to continue the constitution is there. So as long as the scheme of the constitution are not implemented, the reservation shall go, the reservation shall continue. That's why Dr. Ambedkar said, if you want to remove the untouchability, remove the caste. As long as caste is there, untouchability will be there. Gandhi said, keep the caste as such, but remove the untouchability. That is the difference between Gandhi and Ambedkar. Ambedkar said, if you want to remove untouchability, remove the caste, abolish the caste. As long as caste is there, untouchability will be there. So therefore, again in the terms of constitution, Dr. Ambedkar, if you want an equality, implement the constitution. As long as the constitution is not implemented, you don't achieve equality. So therefore, they do not want to achieve equality. Therefore, they do not want to implement the constitution. That is the dichotomy. That's why the need to continue is there.
So last comment along with the question. The first question, question is how the national medias talk about when the atrocities comes. How do you see when atrocity comes, how the national media respond? That is one. And after that you can give a message for the viewers whomever watches this.
National media does not reflect the sorrows of these communities. Any media, including the print media, does not reflect any major event of atrocity. There is no discussion, there is no comment, there is no presentation. They do not want it because the perpetrator being an upper caste and the media, since the media is in the hands of the upper caste, the media serves the interests of the upper caste. They do not want to go against their own interests. If you want to discuss an atrocity, you have to bring all the forces which are against the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes to the fore. You have to name them. You have to accept their guilt and see that they are punished. So the media doesn't want it. Ultimately, what I advise and appeal to the viewers and the listeners, the only task in this country is to implement the Constitution of India. All our efforts should be in that line. The goal is to achieve equality, liberty and fraternity. Fraternity is living together, living like brothers. Caste system divides us. Caste system dissects us. Caste system separates us. Constitution wants to bridge brotherhood among these separated, dissected, different communities. So if you want to achieve fraternity, if you want to achieve equality, if you want to achieve liberty, implement the Constitution. Therefore, my appeal to all my brothers and sisters, let us all strive together to implement the Constitution in its true and real spirit. Dr. Baba Saheb Ambedkar.